He walked in alone. No fancy suit. No entourage. Just a worn-out baseball cap, a faded flannel shirt, and tired eyes. To the staff, he looked like any other customer. But what they didn't know was that he owned the place. And what he saw that day, it shattered everything he thought he knew about his business. What happened next wasn't just a wake-up call, it sparked a quiet revolution inside one of the most beloved local restaurant chains in the country. Before we dive into the full story, let us know where you're watching from, and if stories like this move you, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We share inspiring, true stories every day, and tomorrow's might just be our most powerful yet. Now, let's rewind the clock and uncover what really happened. Ethan Miller had always believed in building things that mattered. At 42, he was the proud founder of Harvest Grill, a warm, family-style diner chain with 13 locations spread across the Midwest. 10 years ago, it was just a tiny mom-and-pop spot he opened with his wife in a quiet Illinois town. Today, it had grown into a recognizable name, known for its home-style meals, friendly service, and community feel. But lately, something didn't feel right. Customer reviews had started to shift. Complaints about slow service and unfriendly staff began trickling in, first a few, then more. Ethan read every one of them. And while his regional managers assured him everything was under control, he couldn't shake the feeling that his vision was slipping away. To Ethan, Harvest Grill was never just about food. It was about people, about creating a space where families felt at home and employees felt valued. But now, behind the scenes, something seemed off. Rather than sit back and rely on reports, Ethan decided to do what few CEOs would. He was going to find out the truth for himself, even if it meant going undercover in his own company. It was a gray Tuesday morning when Ethan Miller quietly packed an overnight bag, threw on a worn-out flannel shirt, and traded his usual clean-shaven look for a scruffy beard and baseball cap. No one, not even his assistant, knew where he was headed. He turned off his phone, got into his truck, and drove 2 hours out to a Harvest Grill location tucked away in a sleepy Ohio suburb. This wasn't a random pick. The complaints from this branch had been piling up, long wait times, cold food, and most concerning of all, reports of rude and dismissive staff. Ethan had to see it with his own eyes. He arrived just before the lunch rush, stepping into the familiar smell of grilled chicken and cornbread. But the atmosphere felt different. It lacked the warmth he'd worked so hard to build over the years. The hostess barely looked up as she seated him. The music was too low, the lighting dimmer than usual, and the staff moved with the kind of energy that screamed burnout. Ethan kept his cover, ordering a simple meal and watching the flow of service around him. He noticed how the manager, a man in his late 30s named Derek, barked orders without ever saying, "Please," or "Thank you." The servers moved quickly, but with zero enthusiasm, no smiles, no conversation, just mechanical motions. Then came a moment that shook Ethan to his core. A young waitress, Lily, according to her name tag, was clearly struggling to keep up. A couple at table 7 complained about their food, and Lily, flustered but polite, tried to fix the issue. Instead of stepping in to help, Derek walked over and loudly scolded her in front of customers. "Figure it out, Lily. I'm not babysitting today." The words cut through the air. Ethan could see the embarrassment on Lily's face. She nodded silently and rushed to the kitchen, her eyes already glossy. A few minutes later, Ethan went to the restroom and passed by the kitchen entrance. He stopped when he heard soft crying. Peeking in, he saw Lily wiping her eyes in the corner while trying to plate an order. No one came to comfort her. No one even looked her way. Ethan's heart sank. This wasn't the restaurant he built. This wasn't the family-first culture he had poured his heart into for over a decade. Something was seriously broken, not just in management, but in the spirit of the place. He paid for his meal and left a generous tip, but not before scribbling something on the receipt, "Thank you for your hard work, Lily. You deserve better." As he walked out the door, Ethan made a silent promise to himself: he wouldn't just fix this store. He was going to find out how deep the cracks ran, and do whatever it took to rebuild what had been lost. That night, Ethan checked into a modest roadside motel a few miles from the diner. He couldn't stop thinking about Lily, the tears in her eyes, the tension in her voice, and how the rest of the staff seemed to just accept it. He replayed Derek's tone in his head, cold, dismissive, unbothered. That wasn't leadership. That was damage control at best, and toxic at worst. The next morning, Ethan returned to the diner, this time during breakfast hours. He wore the same disguise, ordered coffee and eggs, and sat quietly at a booth near the counter. From his seat, he could see into the kitchen and had a clear view of the floor staff. What he saw confirmed what he'd feared: this wasn't just a bad day. It was a pattern. The tension in the air was thick. Lily was back on shift, moving quickly but keeping her head down. Derek hovered around like a storm cloud, correcting orders, muttering under his breath, and offering no support. At one point, a new employee, probably no older than 19, accidentally dropped a tray of toast. Instead of helping, Derek rolled his eyes and snapped, "How hard is it to carry bread?" Ethan clenched his jaw. Later, he struck up a quiet conversation with Marcus, the dishwasher, while refilling his coffee at the self-serve station. Marcus was polite but guarded. When Ethan casually mentioned the long hours and the stress, Marcus sighed and said, "Yeah, we're all kinda just surviving right now." Then, after a pause, he added, "Lily's been working doubles. Derek said if she calls out again, she's out. But she's been taking care of her mom, who's sick." That hit Ethan like a gut punch. No one in corporate had mentioned anything about a staffing shortage or personal issues affecting performance. No manager had flagged this situation. It was clear to Ethan that there was no communication between the people in the trenches and those calling the shots from above. The final straw came around noon. A customer became agitated over a wrong order and demanded to speak to the manager. Lily, who'd taken the table, politely apologized and offered to fix it, but the customer was already raising their voice. Ethan waited, expecting Derek to step in. He did, but not to support his employee. He walked over, told the customer, "We'll comp your meal," then turned to Lily and said, within earshot of half the room, "You need to stop messing things up." Ethan had seen enough. The problem wasn't just poor service. It wasn't about slow food or missed orders. It was about culture. People were afraid to speak up. No one felt safe to fail, or even be human. Ethan realized the cracks in his company weren't just forming, they had already spread wide. He quietly slipped out the door and sat in his truck, staring at the steering wheel. He thought of Lily. Marcus. The tired eyes behind every forced smile. This wasn't a branch problem. This was a leadership problem. And it was time to lead. Ethan didn't drive back to headquarters that day. Instead, he spent the afternoon in his truck, journaling every observation he could remember, every unfair comment, every tired expression, every small act of kindness that went unnoticed. He was no longer looking at the company from a CEO's lens. He was looking at it from the eyes of someone who lived it, breathed it, and depended on it to get through the day. He couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere along the line, he had lost touch. 10 years ago, when he opened the first Harvest Grill, he knew every employee by name. He'd help flip pancakes on Sunday mornings, and his kids used to color at the hostess stand. But as the business grew, so did the layers of management. Somewhere between quarterly reports and expansion meetings, the people had become numbers, and trust had become a bullet point in a training manual. That night, Ethan made a decision: no more middleman filters. He was going to talk to his people, really talk. The next morning, he arrived at the diner before opening and asked to speak with the staff privately. Confused, they gathered around, some assuming he was a district inspector or maybe even a reporter. Then Ethan took off his cap, rubbed his chin, and said, "I'm Ethan Miller. I'm the founder of Harvest Grill." Silence. Lily looked stunned. Marcus's eyes widened. Derek, who had just walked in with a coffee in hand, froze mid-step. Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't make a speech. He simply said, "I've been watching. I've been listening. And I'm sorry." There was a long pause, then murmurs, uncertainty, disbelief, relief. Ethan went on to explain that what he saw here didn't reflect the company he built. "I didn't start this place to become another chain. I started it because I believed work could feel like family. And if that's not happening here, then that's on me." He looked directly at Lily. "You didn't deserve what happened yesterday. None of you do." Derek shifted uncomfortably, but Ethan didn't shame him. Instead, he asked him to step outside for a private chat. The two talked for almost half an hour in the parking lot. Ethan discovered that Derek had been promoted too quickly. He was overwhelmed, unsupported, and had no leadership training, just pressure from above and fear of failure. He admitted he'd taken it out on the staff. And to Ethan's surprise, Derek wasn't proud of it. He was burnt out and lost, too. That moment opened Ethan's eyes even further. This wasn't about one bad manager or one underpaid server. It was a systemic problem, a company that had grown too fast without growing its heart alongside it. Ethan realized he didn't just need new rules or better policies, he needed a cultural reboot. This wasn't going to be a quick fix. But it could be a turning point. And that, he knew, had to start with him. After that eye-opening week, Ethan didn't return to his corporate office right away. Instead, he hit the road, visiting 5 more Harvest Grill locations unannounced, each time dressed in the same flannel shirt and worn-out jeans. He talked with employees during smoke breaks, listened in on staff meetings, and even helped bus tables during the dinner rush. The picture became clearer with every stop: exhaustion, poor communication, and a serious lack of support. It wasn't that his employees didn't care. Most of them did, deeply. They just felt invisible. Unheard. Disposable. Ethan knew what had to happen. So when he finally returned to headquarters, he called an emergency leadership summit with all district managers and regional heads. This wasn't a typical boardroom meeting. No graphs. No charts. Just Ethan, standing in front of a whiteboard with one sentence written in bold. "If we're not taking care of our people, what are we even doing?" He shared stories, real ones, from the front lines: Lily crying in the kitchen, Marcus doing double shifts to support his siblings, new hires quitting after a week due to toxic environments. He didn't sugarcoat anything. "We're not failing because of competition or the economy," he said. "We're failing because we forgot who we are." The room was quiet. Some managers looked embarrassed. A few nodded in agreement. One even teared up. That day marked the beginning of a massive shift. Ethan brought in outside consultants to lead leadership and emotional intelligence training for all managers. He replaced Derek with a new general manager, Monica, a calm, people-first leader with years of hospitality experience and a reputation for turning struggling teams into thriving families. Ethan didn't fire Derek. Instead, he offered him a demotion with full mentorship under Monica if he wanted to learn and grow. Surprisingly, Derek accepted. He also launched a new initiative called Voices of the Grill, an anonymous feedback platform where employees could report concerns, share ideas, or simply talk about how they were feeling. Each report would go directly to Ethan and a new people and culture team he built from scratch. Then came the structural changes. No more double shifts without proper rest periods. Guaranteed sick days and mental health support. Quarterly bonuses for employees who showed leadership, kindness, or team spirit, not just performance numbers. Monthly, listening lunches, where Ethan or senior leadership would visit a location, eat with the team, and just talk. He didn't stop there. Each location received a revive budget to improve break rooms, upgrade old equipment, and add small comforts, a coffee machine, better chairs, even plants and music to make the place feel more human. Ethan wasn't trying to bandage the problems. He was rewiring the foundation. Slowly. And this time, the change wasn't coming from the top down. It was rising from. In the weeks that followed, a quiet but powerful shift began taking place inside Harvest Grill. At the Ohio location where it all started, Lily was still showing up early for her shifts, but now, she walked through the doors with her head held high. Monica, the new general manager, greeted every team member by name, asked how they were doing, and meant it. The back-of-house staff noticed the difference immediately. Communication became smoother. Breaks were respected. People started smiling again. Monica met with each employee one-on-one during her first week. When she sat down with Lily, she listened, not just to her work-related concerns, but to her story. Lily opened up about caring for her sick mother, the financial pressure, and the fear of losing her job whenever she needed a day off. Monica promised her something simple, yet rare in food service: stability and support. She made it clear that compassion didn't make a team weaker, it made it stronger. And Lily wasn't the only one blossoming. Marcus, the quiet dishwasher, was promoted to a kitchen assistant role after Monica noticed his attention to detail and steady work ethic. He had never imagined being seen, let alone being offered more responsibility. His pride showed not in words, but in the way he whistled while stocking the line, something no one had heard him do in months. The results weren't just internal. Within a few short weeks, online reviews for the location began to turn around. Customers mentioned friendly service, improved atmosphere, and how the restaurant felt different in the best way. Regulars started returning. Even the employees who had been planning to leave decided to stay, curious to see where things were headed. Meanwhile, at corporate, Ethan was doing the same work on a broader scale, rolling out manager mentorships, restructuring bonus incentives, and setting a new expectation: people first, always. He visited a different store every week, not to inspect, but to listen. He sat in break rooms, took orders at the counter, and asked employees what they needed to do their jobs better. Some requests were simple: working air conditioners, decent aprons, more flexible schedules. Others were bigger: leadership that cared, respect from upper management, and opportunities to grow. Ethan took notes, and more importantly, he took action. The change wasn't instant everywhere, but it was spreading. Slowly, managers who clung to the old, fear-based ways of leadership began to fall away. In their place, new leaders rose, often from within, people who had once been servers, cooks, or baristas. People who knew what it meant to be on the floor during a packed dinner shift and still treat others with kindness. For Ethan, this wasn't about saving a business. It was about honoring the people who had built it with him. And as he stood in that once struggling Ohio location one evening, watching Lily laugh with customers and Marcus close out the kitchen with pride, he realized something. He hadn't just rebuilt a restaurant. He had helped restore a little faith in what work could be. 6 months later, the once struggling Ohio location was thriving, not just on paper, but in spirit. The vibe inside the restaurant had completely transformed. Laughter now echoed from the kitchen, servers greeted customers with genuine warmth, and team members looked out for one another like a true family. Even the decor had a touch more life. Handwritten thank you notes from regulars were pinned up on a corkboard near the entrance, alongside snapshots of staff birthdays, team outings, and little inside jokes. But the biggest shift: people were staying. Employee turnover, which had once been a revolving door, had dropped dramatically. Staff who once dreaded their shifts now felt pride in their work. Customers noticed, too. Yelp and Google reviews flooded in with phrases like "incredible service," "friendly staff," and "feels like home." Lily, once on the verge of quitting, had become one of the restaurant's lead servers. She helped train new hires and even pitched in ideas during team meetings, something she never would have imagined doing a few months prior. When Ethan visited and thanked her for sticking through the tough times, she simply smiled and said, "It finally feels like someone's got our back." Marcus, now fully part of the kitchen team, started mentoring a younger employee who reminded him of himself. "We don't just cook here anymore," he joked one day. "We build each other up." And Monica? She thrived in her new leadership role. She wasn't flashy or loud, but her consistency and compassion rebuilt trust from the ground up. Her store became the model for a company-wide training program called The Human Way, focused on empathy, listening, and leading with respect. It was no longer about corporate values on a poster, it was about living them. Back at corporate, Ethan noticed something different in himself too. He wasn't just a CEO anymore, he had become a student again. He stopped assuming he knew what was best and instead started asking, learning, and adapting. He spent less time in boardrooms and more time in break rooms. That was where the heart of the company truly lived. And the results were undeniable. Employee satisfaction scores soared, customer loyalty deepened, and sales, yes, even the numbers, climbed steadily. But more than any metric, what mattered most to Ethan was this: Harvest Grill had become a place where people wanted to show up again. At the company's year-end gathering, Ethan stood in front of hundreds of employees and shared the story of Lily, Marcus, and the quiet revolution that began with one undercover visit. He didn't frame it as a rescue mission. He framed it as a reminder. A business isn't built on products or profits, he said. It's built on people. And when we take care of them, everything else follows. The room erupted in applause, not the kind you give out of politeness, but the kind that comes from knowing you're part of something real. Harvest Grill wasn't just back. It had found its soul again. The story of Ethan Miller and Harvest Grill isn't just about turning around a business, it's about remembering what truly makes a company thrive. The biggest lesson Ethan learned was simple, yet powerful: when you take care of your people, they'll take care of everything else. It's easy, especially in leadership, to get caught up in spreadsheets, performance charts, and quarterly goals. But those numbers mean nothing without the people behind them. The cooks, the servers, the dishwashers, the managers, they are the heartbeat of the business. Their energy, well-being, and sense of purpose directly shape the customer experience. Ethan's journey also highlighted the importance of listening, not just during annual surveys or exit interviews, but really listening when people are struggling, burning out, or just needing to feel seen. By stepping into their world, even briefly, he was able to reconnect with the soul of the company he had built. Culture isn't a poster on the wall. It's how people treat each other when no one's watching. It's how safe your team feels speaking up. It's how leadership responds when things go wrong. In the end, it wasn't grand gestures or sweeping policies that changed Harvest Grill, it was small moments of humanity, multiplied across many people, day after day. And those moments? They made all the difference.